So today we've got Jalen back. He has done an interview on the channel in the past, and he also has his own YouTube channel, which we will talk about later in the interview. I'm aiming to look deeper into some of Jalen's experiences living with schizoid personality disorder. So, hi Jalen, I'm going to ask you some questions. So,
Oh,
first of all,
yo, it's
hey,
lagging a bit.
is it lagging a bit? Okay,
Yeah.
hopefully it will pick up. All right, so can you describe what it's like living with schizoid personality disorder, like on a day-to-day basis?
On a day-to-day basis, pretty much with SzPD, not a lot. Well, a lot kind of has changed socially, just looking at how I act socially, but a lot of what I describe on my channel is still true. When it comes to day-to-day basis on a personal level, a lot of what SzPD is for me is just I just live a lot of my pretty much all of my self actualization experiences, all of the experiences that sort of allow me to grow as a person, they're just contained like within me. Like I just go about them by myself. I don't really go about them with other people. And like a good example of this could be like having other people like in my life. I don't really have, any people that I really trust all that much in my life. So I just kind of replaced that with like imagining people in my head that I trust and just interact with those people in my head. Now, of course, I know that like this stuff is like not real. I'm not like interacting with something as if it's real, but just imagining myself in those scenarios sort of um a replacement for actually experiencing those things in real time. Of course, there's also like the isolation aspect of it, sort of isolating yourself in order to recoup from the world around you, and those are probably one of the biggest things when it comes to SZPD. Of course, there's always those times where I get a little bit depressed, but that can tie into other things besides people with SCPD. But I do get depressed a lot of times, and it could get bad. But I'm sort of starting to like understand what it is, and now that I know what it is, I can sort of get over it and just be like, okay, it's just one of those days again, and it's just going to go away. So that's pretty much how SCPD is for me on a day-to-day basis, at least for me personally.
Right. Okay. So you spoke about sort of having relationships with people within your mind. And do you find sometimes that you rehearse the things that you want to say, but sometimes after you've rehearsed it, you don't really feel like communicating it anymore?
Um, when it comes to like those relationships in my head, it's mostly just like if there's a particular feeling that like I want to feel, I just make it happen in my head, and like the emotions just happen there. They don't really happen in real time, you know what I'm saying? And like with these people, like a lot of times like I could be having an experience in my head and like I could be in that moment for like it could have gone on for maybe like months on end type thing, like maybe even like a year or whatever, and I'm just having that experience because like I'm not having that experience like in real time, so it has to happen somewhere. So I just imagine it a lot of times. It could be rehearsed. Like sometimes it might just be a spur of the moment sometimes, to where it's just like I wonder how it would be like if I was in this scenario, and then it just pops up in my head. It just depends.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And like, so you've been aware of having SCPD for quite a while. What are
Hmm.
some common misconceptions you've come across? Like, for example, what you've seen like in the literature versus like what you've learned like personally about your experience of living with a condition.
Probably the most common stereotypes. Like I said this in one video. Like when it comes to like the DSM, like of course, like on my video where I go over like an overview of SzPD, like I do like describe how it is like shown in the DSM-5. But again, I sort of say like that's like exoteric stuff, like that's stuff that you'll find like on a type of interaction. And even then, like some of that stuff like might not even apply. Like for me myself, for example, I've started to see like how particularly I am on a job. Like I can easily like attract other people. Like you can have like a lot of people around you. It's just that like all of those people, there's going to be a wall that you have with like all of those people around you that just sort of blocks a certain level of intimacy from being created. So that can be like a stereotype that really isn't true. Like I think a lot of times like people sort of think of like a schizoid as just being like that person just like in a dark room, just like, hunched up in the corner sort of deal. But that's really not what it is. It's really
Yeah.
just um there's just certain walls and certain boundaries that um just can't be crossed when it comes to SCPD, and you try and live a life to where you can keep those walls and those boundaries up as much as possible. For some people, they can hang around other people and still be able to facilitate those boundaries. But others, there might be environments with people that are just too intrusive and they might have to isolate. So it can go one way or the other. For me, like it might be one way or the other depending on the day. Like there's some people that aren't really too intrusive, but then there's others that are. But with all of them, like I maintain a certain distance to where um they're not intimate enough with me to where they can like betray me later on.
Right. So you would say that in social situations, there's like a pervasive sense of detachment, emotional, sorry, detachment from the people around you. And do you think that people pick up on that, or do you think that they just think that what they see on the surface is all there is to you?
I think they pick up on it, but they don't know what it particularly is, because like it could be like one thing or it could be something else. Like I could just be introverted. Like I might not talk to you just because like I'm burnt out and I'm just introverted and I just don't want to have any energy coming towards me right now. So that could be one interpretation. Another interpretation could be I might not be able to understand your cues and your signals. So I might not know that you want me to communicate with you. That could be another interpretation. So like if a person does pick up on it, um I don't think that they'll be able to pick up on what it specifically is. They might be able to pick up on the fact that okay, he sort of wants to be to himself right now, but I don't think they know the reason as to why I want to be to myself, because there's like a whole, there's many different reasons for why a person might want to, be alone sometimes. So it depends.
Okay. Like, I don't know if you've ever like been in one place for a number of years. Like, I don't know, like if you're doing a maybe on your course, you might have had to interact with the same people for a number of years, or maybe at your job, you might have to interact with people for a number of years. And do you feel like you ever feel any problems with familiarity? Like, the more familiar people are getting with you, the more that maybe you want to maybe move in another circle so that you don't build up too much familiarity, or are you okay just maintaining superficial interactions and just carrying on?
Um, like when it comes to circles and spaces, like with circles and spaces, like interacting with like one circle, um, I might be able to talk to certain people and interact with them on a surface level or whatever, but like I just won't let them like talk with me long enough to where I think that they're getting a certain piece of information that I feel is particularly explicit. So like I hang out with people for as long as I need them, to be around. Like when I was in college, I was in a dorm or whatever, so you sort of have to be around other people. And I would hang around people and I would talk, and I would mask sometimes. And like once I sort of got the life lesson that I needed from those people, I just don't really talk to them anymore. Um, like a lot of the people that I met in college, I don't even have their contacts or whatever. I don't, talk to them at all. So it's really just like once I get a life lesson out of them, then I don't know why I need them around. I know it sounds
Right,
kind of, I
yeah.
know it kind of
No,
sounds
that
kind of
makes
selfish.
sense.
I
No,
know it
it,
sounds kind of selfish, but it's like, um, it's just like other stuff that's like more like important to me. Like I don't really think people will be able to like handle it. So I just don't like. There's no point of even talking about it with other people. So I just don't.
I do relate to what you're saying because, like, really, I need a motivation to interact with other people because I'm all right by myself and I don't really feel like I need social interactions like other people do. That mainly it's psychological interest that motivates me to interact with other people because I find like human behavior very interesting. So
Hmm.
that's kind of like my main motivator, really. But even still, it can get to the point, well, for me, where like after you spend a lot of years sort of and you deal with like a lot of mainstream people, you kind of get their patterns and you kind of like get the general sort of idea of what they're about. Of course, there's always individuals and exceptions to this, but after a while, once I start to feel like I've got like a general understanding, then it's like sometimes there's not anything more to be gained from that, unless there's like a real specific angle on it, then it can just be like, well, I don't feel like I'm really learning anything more, if you don't know what I mean, or it can become challenging to find new angles to learn from other people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I
Like,
mean, other people mask as well. It's not just
hmm
people that have mental health issues mask. Everybody masks, but like with other people, um, people like in the modern age, of course, respond and behave to trends. You have people that, respond and behave to specific cultures that they find important or, whatever their in group is. So if their in group is like basketball or sports, like you have an idea like in your head of, okay, they're going to talk like this, they're going to behave like this. If you got the preppy girl type of in group type thing, you know how they're going to behave. You have traits like in your head of what to expect. So it's really just like once you delve into um, like the uniqueness of an individual, like there's certain people that are interesting to learn from, but to me, um, like there's very few like that. Like a lot of people are like when they're in public going to behave according to those trends that I talked about earlier. So
right, okay. And do you find like having your specialist interest, like I know you're into like philosophy and spirituality and other kind of like unique kind of interests. Do you find that because a lot of other people don't share your interest in those ways, that sort of always also limits your like motivation to sort of engage socially with them?
um yeah, I can still socialize, but it sort of makes it to
Mm.
where that real self, it decreases the probability that I'm gonna like show that, like, I can talk to anybody. Like it's easy to really, like talk to people once you can get a rhythm and you understand, where y'all relate or whatever. It's easy to really just, conversate, but, like trying to get real deep with a person, um, that can get harder depending on like the interests, and I have very alien interests. Like I talk about all the time, like the environment that I'm in, the people that I hang around. Um, if I say like, hey, I practice magic, like I'd be doing like magic, and people
Mm.
be like, what's that? Like like you in the Baptist South, and you say magic, it's like, oh no, bro, like we gotta put you on a stake or something. So it's like, um, it increases that distance with what I
Mm.
find important in my life. So yeah, it does. It's a problem. Yeah.
Right, okay. Yeah, what you're saying makes sense. So it's just basically there's a limit on how much you can share with others in that way.
Yeah, and it
So, um,
grows more and more. So it's just, and sometimes, I do want to share. Like, I do want to have people in my life that I can trust, but, you just can never really, like, the radar doesn't pick up to where that type of person is the person I'm talking to.
mm, yeah, that's understandable there. So, like, are you like aware of there being a division between your true self and your full self, and do you relate to having a full self, or is it difficult to tell, like, where that line is? Right?
Like the true self and the false self system. Um, I've been sort of trying to like reconstruct like a new way of seeing myself from the true self and false self system. I just sort of now see myself as there's a self that does things privately according to who I am as a person, and then there's a self that is doing things in order to get its needs met. With the outside environment, like there's like the more so the self that is more connected with the persona, and then there's the self that's more connected with the unconscious. I sort of talked about that in my sort of my new schizoid self structure video that I did, where I was trying to figure out a way to like make a new sense of like what a schizoid can be, like what a new form of like schizoid self structure can be from just the real self, false self. So I'm gonna see how that system works for me. I think it'll be like interesting with everyday life.
Yeah, what I found is like since becoming conscious of the full self system, I found that the full self can be manipulated or consciously constructed or consciously reconstructed, deconstructed, reconstructed, and it's like it's moldable, and because it's moldable, I think that I found that once a consciousness has really set in, I'm able to make my full self into what I want it to be. So that might be along the lines with what you're saying, that there is control in that. It's just that I think when people are unconscious that there is a full self, then there's no way that they're going to have any means to directly influence that full self because they're so in it that they can't get above it or on top of it sometimes. And for some people, the true self really gets pushed into the background because we've all got like different balances between our true self and our full self and different levels of consciousness in each realm. So it's interesting to see how different schizoids have different relationships with their true self and their full self. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think like with the true self, I think it's easier to connect with the true self when you're like to yourself a lot of times. So you can sort of, I think for people like that, it's easier to distinguish between like, okay, this is like the actual self. Like this is how I know I'm going to be like maybe like 80% of the time. I think it's easier to like distinguish that, but I think like with how life is now, it's where life is very social. You got social media, you have marketing, friend groups and all that sort of stuff. I don't really think people have time enough to like be able to understand that what they're portraying is transient. I think the problem with the false self isn't really that it's a false self. I think it's really just that that part of the self is transient, and people don't really understand that it's transient and malleable, like you were talking about. Like, that part of the self is changing according to an environment, what I'm saying? And the environment always changes. Now, of course, your real self, is of course connected to your own autonomy, which, your own autonomy can change, to a certain degree, but there are certain parts of yourself that you learn that just, aren't really going to change all that much. So, like you said, I think like with consciousness, I think that there's like certain awarenesses in these particular parts of the self, and they all just serve their own particular purpose. It might not be that it's a false self. It's just that when it comes to who we are, we're a lot more comfortable with a part of the self that is easy to analyze and doesn't change all that much, instead of a part of the self that you can't really put your hands on, because it'll be one way today and be one way tomorrow.
Yeah, the thing is, I find that with my true self, and you talked about the parts, and you talked about you analyzing your own parts in the past, that I can sort of switch between different parts of my true self. And when I'm in one part of my true self, I don't have awareness of other parts of my true self, So it's like, it's kind of like my full self is transient, but by having control over that, I have more control about over how I interact with the world and environment. And with my inner self, it's a lot of times I feel that I'm just subject to like passing thoughts, and whatever goes on within just goes on within. Like, I don't really have a lot of control, I think, over my true self, in the sense that it feels like quite changeable, if you know what I mean. Like, not solid, not like yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it's complicated, but I hear what you're saying though.
Hmm.
Okay, and how does like being schizoid influence like your motivation and like your ability to set goals for the future?
Um, like I have to be able to sort of re-articulate what it means to progress, because progression is really not going to be just like a joyous, like exhilaration that a lot of people anticipate progress to be. At least that's not how it is for me. Progress for me is really going to be, okay, I have a particular goal, I have a particular interest in mind. And the closer that I get to that goal, whether it be through measurements or just through understanding that I'm making progress unconsciously, that's really going to be the true measurement of progress. I'm not really going to be able to understand it emotionally all that well. I'm just going to have to be as like physically pragmatic about it in order to be able to understand it, if that makes any sense.
So what you mean is like you just set like sort of an agenda for yourself regardless of how you feel about it, basically, like what needs to be done, sort of thing, maybe.
Yeah, it's more so just like meaning, like this sort of ties into like, like meaning in life. Like I have a particular meaning in my life, or something that I view as like important, and it's not really emotional for me. Like meanings in my life, things that I view as important, things that I want to go towards, like I don't really view them as emotionally important. I just feel like with the way that I am as a person, that's just where I'm going to go, whether I like it or not. And the closer that I get to those goals, that's really progress for me. And motivation is if I see something in my life, or I see something in the world around me that can like further push me in that direction, then that's something that I view as a motivation for me. It's not really like a it's not as emotional as it is for other people. Or if it is emotionally like how it is, I can't really like I can't pinpoint it. Like I can't understand it.
Right. Do you find that like sometimes you're more motivated by damage limitation than through wanting to like acquire things, like to try
Um,
and avoid negative outcomes?
yeah, like I'm more motivated towards weaknesses that I see in myself because um like I just don't want any holes like to be like in my life because like those holes, you know, can damage me. And if you meet somebody that's emotionally smart enough and you know can psychoanalyze you just like you psychoanalyze yourself, if you meet somebody like that, you know, they can pinpoint those holes as well and use them against you. So yes, I am more motivated towards weaknesses in myself and trying to um, fix those, like rather than you know sort of build upon strengths that I already have. I just don't. I just want to be a complete person. You know what I'm saying? And being a complete person for me requires fixing the weaknesses before moving on to the strengths. Really.
Right. And do you ever find yourself like being maybe a little bit immobilized or caught up in the cycle of perfectionism?
Uh, Not necessarily. Like for me, like the for me the most difficult thing about life is continuing it really because like when you don't really have a lot of emotion going on, then it can be kind of hard because then you have to rely on logic and truth and facts for something that really is quite empty because really life is quite empty. And if it isn't empty, then it's unintelligible. You can't really understand it. You know, like I mean, even like people that believe in God, you know, talk about the fact that you can't really you can't really talk about God. Like you know, you have the via negativa. If you say that He's good, then you're saying that you know He can't be bad. Yada yada yada. And of course, with atheists, you know, there is no God. So there's not really a consciousness. There's not really any ideal out there. It's just matter. So a lot of times, you know, you just have to come up with stuff that works for you. And you know, when you come up with stuff that works for you, a lot of times, sometimes you'll be like, man, what I just said in my head, it's not working no more. And then you just have to continuously re-articulate and re-articulate. So like that's really the biggest um, problem for me is trying to continue with life when you know that it can be or really is like you just can't understand it.
Right. And do you find like that you have to kind of like try to create reasons, like work hard on creating reasons for doing things because of that? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I have to really just be um, like I said, I really just have to be result oriented. You know, having reasons is good, and you know, since I'm like just an intellectual person, like I'm just addicted to reasons, so it could be kind of hard to just you know live a life that is result oriented. But you know, that's what I've sort of been having to do. You know, I just sort of been having to say, okay, I want this. So, you know, I just need to focus on that. And once I get this, then I need to move on to the next thing that I planned on and just like focus on that and sort of just put reasoning on the back burner for a while because it's just gonna be endless, you know, if I just focus on reason, you know, at least when it comes to living life.
Right. And so like living in a place of like primarily like logic and facts and having the emotional detachment, do you find that like compared to other people you know, it's easier for you to like go into like dark topics or things occurring in the world that other people find uncomfortable to face up to or address?
Um, I think that, I'm probably more open to taboo and dark topics, more so than other people. Now, I don't really have anybody in my life that I can talk to about that stuff, but, I do understand that, I'm probably, at least like, I'm the only person that I know that goes into, those specific topics.
Right. Yeah. Because I find that that I think about a lot of things that other people, things that people have hang-ups about or they find uncomfortable. I don't have a problem thinking with, because if it's something that actually exists in the world, or something I know to be true, or something I know to be occurring, then it's it's okay for me to think about that thing and try and understand why it exists, why it happens, why it's occurring, like regardless of what it is. But like you said, there's a lot of people that really they have defenses against processing information that feels uncomfortable or personally might hurt them or make them feel bad in some way. So in that way, I find that it limits like where they're willing to go in their conversation sometimes when going into certain depths that like, you could call it like dark or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, and also like things that are just that society doesn't really like talk about a whole lot. Like there's just a whole lot of areas and topics and just information that society just doesn't really address all that much. So things like that too can be considered taboo topics that people don't talk about.
Right. And you done a video that was interesting, and you were saying why you're not a narcissist or a psychopath. And have you, in the past, because of your emotional detachment or your different way of functioning, considered that you might have been a psychopath or a narcissist? And what is it about how you function that enables you to like rule those things out?
Um, like in life, I always just went under the label of okay, I'm just introverted. But of course, like being introverted doesn't really explain like the emotional things. Like reasoning, existential thoughts. Depression sometimes, isolating yourself from people. That doesn't really explain like the introversion. So for me, like ruminating on okay, do I have SzPD was sort of compared with okay, how introverted I am. So it wasn't really narcissism or psychopathy. But with narcissism and psychopathy, like we're not going into that topic. I'm not calling narcissists and psychopaths bad people. Like narcissists and psychopaths, they go through trauma just like everybody else does. And with psychopaths that don't go through trauma and that are mostly that have psychopathy due to biology, you can't really knock them because it's biology. They didn't have no control over it, to begin with. So I'm not saying that these are bad people. I'm saying I'm mostly speaking in terms of intentions and behavior. For me, I say that I'm not a narcissist because I'm not really concerned with self-esteem. Like my behaviors aren't really dictated by okay, I need to project a wall of grandiosity in order to protect a frail real self. That's not really the motivations behind why I do things. Like I do things because there are certain emotions, there are certain things within myself that I find as important that I just cannot share with other people. Sometimes I can't even share them with myself. So that's really the problem with, you know, me. Now, when it comes to psychopathy, it's quite easy because, it's in the name. I do have empathy. A lot of it is cognitive empathy, but I do even have emotional empathy. Like there will be some experiences to where like somebody might be like getting told off at work or something, and I'll be like, ugh, like there'll be a bodily reaction to it. So there is something emotional going on within me to what another person is experiencing, emotional empathy. So when it comes to when it comes to psychopathy, that's why I'm not a psychopath. And of course, I already explained why, being a narcissist is not me either.
Right. Yeah. That's a good explanation. And back to the philosophy aspect. Are there any philosophers that you particularly resonate with that have maybe, I don't know, offered insights that have made your schizoid state of being maybe more meaningful or more manageable or more tolerable in any way? Or just even just philosophers that you just like because you resonate with them for one reason or another?
Hmm. Probably. Um, okay, so when it comes to existential philosophers, I think the philosopher that was best for me was Kierkegaard. Particularly his, well, really both ideas. His idea on anxiety and the self, and also his concept of the night of faith. Now, when it comes to the self, Kierkegaard, talks about the fact that, we're all anxious. And, at some point in our lives, we're going to go through a form of self reflection where we understand that we're not who we really are. And then, when we realize that we're not who we really are, we might go out and try and find it in the environment. Then when we don't find it in the environment, we might reflect back on ourselves and realize who we are, and we won't be able to escape that fact. And of course, Kierkegaard is a Christian, so he believes that once you understand that you can't really escape from who you are, the only answer at that point is, faith in God. Like only God can be able to change and help you out at that point. Now, for me, I think it's just, you know, a purpose in life. That's what it is for me. That's my replacement for God in that system. So, when I look at my life, I understand that I kind of understand who I am, like at least a significant portion of who I am. I'm only like 23, but I can get a trend of how things are going to turn out. But you know, um, there is some anxiousness about who I am. There are some things that I understand are going to be problematic and that I understand are troublesome. But the only way that I can alleviate that is just to continue living my life, because like I view my life as having a um, particular purpose, right? Now, for me personally, like my personal existential philosophy on life is that if you want to label the universe as, let's just say, like mathematics, if you want to say that the universe is just mathematics, symbols, and equations or whatever, like I view who I am as an equation. Like I view myself as an equation, and I view my job as expressing that equation to the world around me, being able to understand the symbols and numbers within that equation, and being able to live that equation out. Like that's my view on life. I view my life as being like I'm a particular movement, and I need to move to the finish line, to put it simply. So, but it's not just existential philosophers. I don't think a lot of people like know of this person, but you have Colin Wilson. He like made a book called The Outsider, and I think that that's a really good book, not just for like if you got SzPD, but really a lot of people that are ostracized. Like you have the Doomer community. You know about the Doomer community, like
Are they
Doomers.
like nihilists? Like
Yeah, they're like those. The meme of the dude with like
the
the
end of the
beanie on
world's
his head, and
coming?
he's smoking a cigar and all that sort of stuff. But just a lot of people that feel like they don't quite fit in, and they have to understand what that means. Colin Wilson's The Outsider was a book that really helped me out. Like I read that book like years ago, but it still helped. But when it comes to like mainstream philosophy, it's definitely Kierkegaard. I know I didn't really talk about the Night of Faith, but the Knight of Faith is pretty much just again somebody that goes through life understanding that um, the only way they can pretty much live their life out is with a particular like set object in their mind. Of course, again, Kirk is a Christian, so it's God, but it's purpose for me.
Right. Yeah, that's very clearly stated. Thanks for that. And I was wondering as well about like your YouTube channel and your YouTube journey. You mentioned it a little bit throughout, but like, has anything like changed for you in your understanding or your development since starting your channel? Has it like helped you to reflect more on like your condition, or have you what sort of like what have you gained from your journey?
Um, I think my YouTube channel, what I really like, the good thing about it is it's like a visual like display of like what I'm going through. Of course, like I have like an audio journal type deal on my iPhone. Like you have like the little voice recording app of your iPhone.
Mm,
Like I got like hundreds of voice recordings of just talking about stuff in my life on there, but now I kind of have like a whole vlog thing where I can see how I am visually. So that's been a big help, and of course, like there's the good and there's the bad. So there's a whole spectrum on my channel that I can go over. But one thing that I think about my channel that I do need to improve upon is I need to have a more diverse range of content. Like my idea was to have a second channel, but I'm too lazy to put stuff on that second channel, and just uploading takes so long on my second channel, so I'm just going to stick to my first channel. And I think that's going to help out a lot, because I think it's a disservice just to upload SzPD content. Of course, I want to upload other stuff on there due to my own personal reasons, but I still think that it's a disservice when it comes to ScPD, because if, let's just say, like a person goes to my channel to see like what ScPD person is like, and all they see is ScPD content, they're going to be like, well, okay, all a schizoid is a schizoid. So I think uploading other content will be able to illustrate the fact that there's other stuff going on, like in a schizoid's life, because a schizoid isn't just a schizoid. Like at the end of the day, like Jalen is Jalen. Like schizoid is just a particular thing in my life that I go through, but I go through a whole bunch of stuff. Like I said, I get depressed sometimes. There's times where I get angry. I like to read books. There's a whole lot of different dimensions than just that, and I think it's a problem that like I don't show that on my channel, really.
right. Yeah, I get what you're saying, because like sometimes like I feel like I've got like a whole universe inside of my head. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different thoughts and ideas and a lot of different things, but I find it hard to get it out. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a
Yeah,
lot going on, but it's the getting it out bit that is like the real struggle. You know?
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. Um, well, this has been like a really good interview, and you said a lot of things like that's made me think, and yeah, I've enjoyed speaking to you today, and I hope to speak to you again sometime, really. And yeah, to everybody watching, check out Jalen's channel. It's called Jalen the Automaton. I hope I pronounced that correctly this time. Can you say it? Because you speak clearer than me.
It was Jalen the Automaton, but
Is it
I just,
changed now?
yeah, I just made it my first name. I just changed it to Jalen.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll put it in the description below this video and in the comments so that you can find it anyhow. And thank you for your time. And yeah, bye for now.
All right.